The big headline from the Prime Minister's US visit so far: he's met with US Vice President Kamla-Harris and they discussed the COVID-19 situation in their respective countries, including ongoing efforts to contain the pandemic through expedited vaccine efforts. Here's all the information on the big meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Vice President Kamla-Harris.
Hard-nosed diplomacy,
the climate crisis,
fond remembrance of a shared background, and a tour of the Eisenhower Tower. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's first meeting with US Vice President Kamla-Harris, who traces her roots to India, was hectic and filled with optics. The two leaders addressed the media jointly.
About the pride.
Kamla-Harris began by lauding India's decision to restart Vaccine Maitri, the mission to export vaccines to low-income countries.
On COVID-19, our nations have worked together. Early in the pandemic, India was a vital source of vaccines for other countries.
India's phenomenal vaccination drive too caught the United States Vice President's eye.
It is of particular note and admiration that India, I'm told, is currently vaccinating approximately 10 million people a day as of today.
In the backdrop of Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, Kamala-Harris stressed on the need to work together to strengthen democracy.
As democracies around the world are under threat, it is imperative that we defend democratic principles and institutions within our respective countries and around the world.
Kamala-Harris also remembered her Indian connection.
I know from personal experience and from my family of the commitment of the Indian people to democracy and to freedom and to the work that may be done and can be done to imagine and then actually achieve our vision for democratic principles and institutions.
Prime Minister Modi thanked the United States for extending help during the second COVID wave.
जब भारत कोविड की दूसरी लहर से बहुत ही पीड़ित था, बड़ा संकट था, लेकिन उस समय जिस प्रकार से आत्मीयता से आपने भारत की चिंता की, जो शब्द व्यक्त किए और जो सहायता के लिए हाथ बढ़ाया, इसके लिए मैं फिर एक बार हृदय से आपका आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
Prime Minister Modi emphasized on supply chain resilience, an area of interest for both countries given the global economy's dependence on China.
सप्लाई चेन की मजबूती, नवीनतम टेक्नोलॉजी और अंतरिक्ष जैसे क्षेत्रों में आपकी विशेष रुचि है। यह क्षेत्र मेरे लिए भी विशेष प्रायोरिटी के हैं। इन क्षेत्रों में हमारे बीच सहयोग बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है।
The PM hailed Kamala-Harris's historic election victory, describing her elevation to one of the most powerful positions in the world as an inspiration to many.
आपका उपराष्ट्रपति के नाते चुने जाना अपने आप में एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण घटना है, ऐतिहासिक घटना है, और आप पूरे विश्व के में बहुत से लोगों के लिए प्रेरणा स्रोत है।
Prime Minister Modi closed his statement by inviting Kamala-Harris to India.
भारत के लोग भी चाहेंगे कि भारत में आपकी इस ऐतिहासिक विजय यात्रा को सम्मानित करें, आपका स्वागत करें, इसलिए मैं आपको विशेष रूप से भारत आने का निमंत्रण देता हूं।
That wasn't all. After the official engagements, Kamala-Harris was seen giving a tour of iconic Eisenhower Tower situated west of the White House. With Geeta Mohan in Washington, D.C., Bureau Report, India Today.
Maintaining a free and open.
Another big takeaway from the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Vice President Kamla-Harris. The US Vice President referred directly to Pakistan's role in fomenting terror. Foreign Secretary Harshvesh Shringla, while speaking about the meeting, said, and I quote, "When the issue of terrorism came up, the Vice President Suomoto referred to Pakistan's role in that regard. She asked Pakistan to stop supporting terror and also said there's a need to go ahead and rein in and closely monitor Pakistan's support for such terror groups." So that is a clear statement from the United States as to exactly where they stand on the issue of Pakistan terror. Kamla-Harris, according to the Foreign Secretary Harshvesh Shringla, didn't shy away, didn't hesitate from naming Pakistan. She referred to Pakistan's role in fomenting trouble and said that there's a need for Pakistan to stop doing this and to rein in terror activity that's happening on their soil. So this is a big takeaway from the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and US Vice President Kamla-Harris.
When the issue of terrorism came up, the Vice President Suomoto referred to Pakistan's role in that regard. She said that there were terror groups that were working there. She asked Pakistan to take action so that these groups do not impact on US security and that of India. She agreed with the Prime Minister's briefing on the fact of cross-border terrorism and the fact that India had been a victim of terrorism for several decades now, and all the need to rein in and closely monitor Pakistan's support for such terrorist groups.
Our Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan is reporting from Washington, D.C. with all the latest updates. Geeta, big takeaway there from that meeting between Prime Minister Modi and US Vice President Kamla-Harris. According to the Foreign Secretary, Kamla-Harris didn't shy away from naming Pakistan. The issue of terror came up. She immediately said that the onus is on Pakistan to stop fomenting trouble on its soil.
Well, that's right, actually. But also look at this. Secretary Blinken met Sharma Qureshi, where he applauded and he lauded and appreciated Pakistan's efforts in Afghanistan. In many ways, in Iran, they think good cop, bad cop. They're trying to balance the entire stand and positioning of the United States of America, and the day ahead of the Biden-Modi meet, it would have looked very bad. Blinken was praising Pakistan. With some guys, obviously, our Vice President in damage control mode, but yet a significant statement coming nonetheless from the United States administration, where when the reference and the conversation on counterterrorism took place, there was no prodding that was required. Vice President Kamla-Harris has self-acknowledged that Pakistan's role in Afghanistan and in the region has been detrimental to the interests of their allies, and counterterrorism is something that they have to work on, and supporting terror needs to be reined in, and Pakistan needs to be watched and closely monitored. Significant message there from Vice President of the United States of America when it comes to standing with India against Pakistan-based terror networks and Pakistan's support for the terror networks.
All right, Geeta, thank you for joining us with those details. So the Foreign Secretary Harshvesh Shringla confirming that when the issue of terror came up, Suomoto, the US Vice President, named Pakistan and put the onus on Pakistan to go ahead and stop terror activities. Now let's also focus on the big headline that's expected from day 2. The Prime Ministers met with US Vice President Kamla-Harris. What next? The countdown begins for Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting now with US President Joe Biden. Biden will be hosting Modi at the White House. That's happening at 8:30 tonight, Indian Standard Time. And the reason this is very crucial, it's the first meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden in person after Biden took over as president.
It's a meeting that will have repercussions across the globe spectrum. The leaders of world's oldest democracy and world's largest democracy face to face as the world closely watches. US President Joe Biden will be hosting Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House on Friday. This will be the first time Joe Biden is meeting Prime Minister Modi in person after being elected as the President of the US. The last time Joe Biden met Prime Minister Modi in person was back in 2014, when Biden was the Vice President under Barack Obama's presidency. The two leaders last spoke on the phone in April during the peak of the COVID crisis, when Prime Minister Modi thanked the US for its support and solidarity in time of need. In the last 6 months, a lot has changed. The global economy is shaky. Taliban is back in Afghanistan, and China is aggressively widening its influence. The two leaders will have their task cut out, from vaccines to climate change to defense. Tonight's meeting will have a lot riding on it. Bureau Report, India Today.
Geeta Mohan is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Geeta, the big headline event, Prime Minister Modi's meeting with Joe Biden. What really can we expect from the bilateral? What's on the agenda?
Well, this is going to be the first meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Biden after he assumed office. Not the first time that the two leaders are meeting, but certainly the first time with President Biden in office. A crucial one also at that, because we know that during campaigning, there was a lot of endorsement that came Trump's way from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But Indo-US ties is a continuum. They are a continuum and they don't really change. Policies with regards to these two countries have been consistent on many accounts, but there are challenges. The challenges are on the issue of visas. The challenges are on the issue of trade. A free trade agreement still is elusive. We still have not seen whether if the two countries are really going to come together to find a middle path to trade better between the two sides. That certainly is an area of concern. Economic cooperation, when you talk about that, you're talking about a post-COVID world where both countries need to cooperate to ensure resilience, in not just in the market system, but also in the global economy. And India and the United States of America can play a very, very crucial role. Apart from that, it's the regional security and global security situation that is of great importance, and it will come up. US withdrawal from the United States of America is a concern for India, because for India, the biggest ally in Afghanistan was America, and with them gone, the security scenario for India changes dramatically. Also, recognition of the Taliban government. It is not inclusive. The non-inclusivity is an aspect that is going to be discussed between the two sides, and how to go about engaging a government that has not a single woman in their cabinet, has discriminated against the minorities within their own country. So these are aspects that are certainly going to come up for India. Terrorism is a concern.
Right.
Pakistan might come up, but China certainly is going to be a part of the conversation.
Right. Geeta, thank you very much for joining us with all of those details. So Prime Minister Modi meeting with US President Joe Biden today, and that's going to be something we're focusing on very closely here on India Today. Prime Minister Modi is believed in adding a personal touch during his interactions always with the leaders of the world's oldest democracy. Now, will the Biden administration, which has kept human rights, free speech at the forefront of its agenda, give a warm welcome to Prime Minister Modi?
If there's one place Prime Minister Narendra Modi feels at home outside India, it would be the United States. In the 7 years he's been the Prime Minister, this is his 7th visit to the country. And over this period, he has interacted with 3 presidents, Joe Biden, the latest. Indo-US relations under Modi are also about the personal touch he brings to the negotiating table. President Barack Obama, for instance, is friend Barack. a friend to whom he personally served tea. In Donald Trump, Prime Minister Modi found another friend and ally. India carried out surgical strikes in POK after the Uri terror attack and later launched airstrikes on Jaish-e-Mohammed terror camps deep inside Pakistan in Balakot. The US under Trump stood with New Delhi. There were missteps as well, the biggest letdown being edged out of the peace talks in Afghanistan. The camaraderie, however, was too good to believe. It led Prime Minister Modi to Houston, where he, many felt, openly endorsed Trump for a second term.
The words of candidate Trump, "Ab ki baar, Trump Sarkar."
They even took out a victory lap in front of a thrilled diaspora. On many issues, the Biden administration may take a different line from Trump's. If Trump was silent when India abrogated Article 370 in Jammu and Kashmir, Biden and his Democrat colleagues during the presidential campaign had criticized the decision, much to our discomfort. But much has happened since then. The global economy is shaky after the worst humanitarian crisis since the World War. The Taliban is back in Afghanistan, posing an even bigger terror threat to the world. Pakistan continues its old game of blackmail diplomacy. The Chinese are spreading their influence aggressively. The world is no more unipolar. There are fears of another Cold War.
We're not seeking, say it again, we are not seeking a new Cold War or a world divided into rigid blocks. The United States is ready to work with any nation that steps up and pursues peaceful resolution to shared challenges, even if we have intense disagreements in other areas.
Day 2 is going to be about the big Quad in-person summit meeting between and among the Quad leaders and the bilateral between President Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where the focus is going to be Afghanistan, counter China, resilient supply chains, as also post-COVID recovery and economic cooperation. With video journalist Yukendra Singh in Washington, D.C., Geeta Mohan for India Today.
Welcome back. Also on the agenda for the Prime Minister in the United States is the Quad Summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, before these crucial Quad summits, held bilateral meetings with the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, as well as with the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. On the agenda were regional as well as global developments in areas related to trade, defense, clean energy, and also, very importantly, the COVID pandemic.
The exclusive club of 4 of the world's top leaders. For the first time, all the Quad leaders sitting across the table. President Biden, Prime Minister Modi, the Australian and Japanese premiers meet on Friday to brainstorm on global and regional issues. The focus is the Indo-Pacific, but the summit being held in an eventful year will discuss the pandemic response, particularly strengthening the vaccine supply chain, along with climate change and education. Ahead of the crucial Quad summit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met his Australian counterpart Scott Morrison. In the meeting, Prime Minister Modi discussed a wide range of topics, including deepening economic ties between the two countries. Prime Minister Modi also held bilateral talks with his Japanese counterpart Yoshihide Suga. Both are members of the Quadrilateral Security Alliance, or the Quad. And 3 hours before the 4 leaders meet, the Prime Minister will hold his first bilateral meeting with President Biden. The summit in Washington will be closely monitored 11,000 kilometers away in Beijing. The Quadrilateral grouping aims at countering the growing Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific region. Quad's target is a free and open Indo-Pacific, unconstrained by coercion. It's an informal strategic dialogue between 4 like-minded nations to negate China's expansionism. The first in-person summit of the Quad comes at an important time with the Indo-Pacific undergoing a geopolitical churn. And with Biden taking the lead in hosting it, the United States is signaling its resolve to defend its interest in the Indo-Pacific. With Geeta Mohan in Washington, D.C., Bureau Report, India Today.